Do you really believe you know Tolkien's most epic tale? Then you better hold on tight, because what happened at Nirnaeth Arnoediad isn't just a battle. It's a dark mirror of human nature, the downfall of heroes, and the brutal force of betrayal. While many lose themselves in the beauty of Middle-earth or marvel at the deeds of the Fellowship of the Ring, few know that long before that, there was a war so devastating that the very fabric of reality seemed to shatter. It wasn't just any fight. It was a meticulously orchestrated massacre. It was the unlikely union of elves, men, and dwarves, being torn apart not by enemy sword, but by pride, ancient grudges, and false alliances. And the worst part, courage didn't save anyone. Not the greatest, not the purest. Fingon fell, Húrin was cursed, and Morgoth won. Yes, won. That's the part nobody likes to tell, but it's exactly why it must be told. Now imagine applying the lessons from that battle, yes, lessons, to your own life. How do you deal with betrayal? How do you react when plans crumble? How do you move forward after a defeat that seemed like the end? The answers aren't found only in books. They're in the nuances of what happened there, under the blood-stained skies of Nirnaeth Arnoediad. In this video, you're going to dive deep into that conflict. You'll understand the mistakes, the strategies, the sacrifices, and the cursed legacy it left behind. But more than that, you'll walk away transformed, with a new perspective on courage, failure, leadership, and even on how to rebuild when everything seems lost. After all, as the old chronicles said, even countless tears can water the roots of a new hope. Sometimes all a people need is a spark of courage to rekindle hope. That's exactly what happened with Medros when he heard about Beren and Lúthien's daring challenge to Morgoth. And between you and me, that kind of courage moves mountains, or in this case, armies. Inspired, Medros began rallying scattered forces, elves, men, and even the proud dwarves. Something unthinkable until then in Middle-earth. But uniting such different peoples isn't like organizing a Sunday barbecue. Imagine trying to get co-workers who can't stand each other together on a group project. It's guaranteed tension, but Medros did more than that. He built bridges where there was once only distrust, uniting leaders marred by old resentments. And even with the murmurs of the mistakes of the sons of Fëanor still echoing, hope was born again, shy but alive. It's the kind of hope you feel when you see someone get back on their feet after a long fall. You know how it is, right? People like Turgon, the one who kept Gondolin a complete secret, also felt the call. It's like when that quiet friend who never shows up suddenly surprises you at a crucial moment. Turgon was quietly preparing his forces, convinced that the right time would come. And that time was near. Middle-earth, so scarred by losses and trauma, began to breathe again. And it wasn't just Medros who was stirring. This movement teaches us a lot. Sometimes true leadership is about inspiring, not dominating. And that applies to your life too. If you want to mobilize the people around you, whether in a company, a social project, or even a study group, start by rekindling the vision. Show the why behind the battle. Want a practical example? Study stories of leaders who brought unlikely forces together, like Mandela or Churchill, and use that as a guide to manage your own alliances. Now, on one hand, hope was reborn, but on the other, old wounds began to throb. After all, not everyone was willing to leave the past behind, and the first signs of cracks started to appear. And that's when the shadows began to circle again. It's curious how, even when facing a common enemy, pride can speak louder. Medros may have lit a flame of hope, but he couldn't extinguish centuries of distrust. Orodreth of Nargothrond, for example, turned his back, and Thingol of Doriath, he held every slight from the sons of Fëanor as if they were sacred relics. The truth is, in Middle-earth, memory is a double-edged sword. It preserves culture, but it also feeds grudges. And trust me, few were as sharp as these. The result was a patchwork alliance, that we're in this together but not really kind of union. Only small contingents answered the call. People like Gwyndor, who didn't fight for Medros or strategy, but for revenge, a dangerous, volatile fuel. Have you ever seen someone make major decisions with their heart burning with anger? Exactly. You can't expect balance when you're carrying such a personal pain. Gwyndor marched, not with hope, but with a thirst for retribution, and that changes everything. This silent division teaches us a valuable principle. True alliances aren't built on good intentions alone. They require trust built over time. In your life, think about how many times you've tried to resolve something important with someone you barely trusted. Whether in a work project, a relationship, or a business partnership, the foundation will always be trust, and not just a common enemy. If you want to avoid betrayals, invest in clarity, dialogue, and a shared vision from the very start. And between us, the atmosphere among the allies was a lot like that neighborhood association meeting where every neighbor has an old grudge with someone else, but everyone still has to decide together on the building's security. Tough, right? Even more so when some are working against you, even if they pretend to be on your side. And in Middle-earth, as in real life, not every smile is genuine. The first signs that something was off were already there, in whispers, absences, sidelong glances. But even with that unstable foundation, the battle went on. And Medros, perhaps unknowingly, was stepping on a minefield, because the enemy already knew more than they should. Medros, despite the cracks in the alliances, knew how to think like a strategist. He wasn't just a sword, he had a sharp mind. And it was with that clarity that he devised an audacious plan to attack Angband from two flanks. A bold, calculated move, like sacrificing a minor piece in a chess game to trap the king. But in Middle-earth, the pieces don't always follow the script, especially when the board is swarming with unseen eyes. While the leaders were drawing maps and aligning troops, Morgoth's spies were well in position. The Easterlings, so-called allies in theory, already had betrayal in their blood. That thing masquerading as we're together, but deep down was all about convenience. It's like when someone joins a project just to take advantage, waiting for the right moment to bail or flip the game. In practice, Medros's plans were handed over on a silver platter, and Morgoth, he just smiled and prepared. This point is vital. It doesn't matter if you have the perfect plan, if you ignore the human factor, or in this case, the inhuman. It works the same way in your life. You can have the best marketing strategy, financial planning, or life project. But if you ignore who's really with you and who's just using you, you're going to sink. Do as the wise generals do. Study the intentions, not just the actions. Want an example? Every time you form a team, observe how people behave when no one is watching. Back in Middle-earth, Morgoth quietly adapted his defenses, a venomous smile on his lips. He knew exactly where to aim, how long to wait, and who to sacrifice first. While the heroes organized themselves, thinking they were one step ahead, the enemy was already 5 steps ahead. That's the nature of shadows. They move before you. Even notice. And when the truth comes to light, it's usually too late. Then the tension ignited like gunpowder. And all it took was a single spark, a personal pain, a memory of spilled blood, to turn strategy into chaos. Some things are beyond the control of reason. When Gwyndor saw his brother Gelmir brutally executed, there was no plan, no hierarchy, no command that could contain him. It was as if the entire logic of war vanished, leaving only the pain screaming inside his chest. It's that kind of impulse that doesn't wait for approval. It just happens. And that's how he charged, alone, tearing through the battlefield like a misplaced lightning bolt. And sometimes, even chaos has its use. Gwyndor's lone assault, however disorganized, caught Morgoth off guard. No one expected such raw, personal fury, and that initial impact opened up important gaps. Fingon, seeing the opportunity, ordered the general assault. What was meant to be a coordinated move turned into a surging wave of courage. The combined force of the troops made the ground tremble at the gates of Angband. For the first time in a long while, hope seemed greater than fear, and that, in itself, was a victory. Think about it. Sometimes impulsive action, even off-plan, can reveal hidden opportunities. It's like when someone speaks up in an important meeting, even when not asked to, and suddenly brings a transformative idea to light. Improvisation isn't always the enemy of success. In your journey, don't dismiss emotion as weakness. Channel it. Anger, sadness, love are powerful fuels when used consciously. Use these moments to act with authenticity, like Gwyndor, but with direction. Middle-earth was once again witnessing that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to act despite it. Fingon and his men faced the walls of darkness, and yet they advanced. It was like watching a group of candles charging against a hurricane, but they lit the way, and for brief moments the forces of evil retreated. The wall was breached, the orcs scattered in disarray, and for the first time, even Morgoth felt a chill. But what comes after an impetuous storm? Silence. And in that silence, Morgoth's true forces began to move, colder, more calculated, and infinitely crueler. The bravery of the elves was never just about swords or magic. It was about standing tall even when the world crumbles around you. And that's exactly what happened when Morgoth decided to show the full extent of his power. Gwyndor, the very comet-like warrior, was captured, and Fingon. He was forced to retreat under a downpour of losses that soaked the soil of Middle-earth. It was like watching a candle flicker in a tempest. The hero who once advanced now struggled to survive. In that chaos, an unexpected force shone through. The dwarves of Belegost. Yes, those whom many thought were distant, concerned only with their forges and precious stones. For it was they who faced Glaurung, the first of the dragons, head-on, without hesitation. It's as if a small group of firefighters decided to battle a raging blaze with buckets, but each one made of steel. King Azargal, with a silent ferocity, drove his blade into the beast, sealing both of their fates. He died, but became a legend, and that shows us something powerful. Never underestimate the quiet ones. In real life, how many times does the most decisive support come from someone you least expected? Whether it's the co-worker who never speaks, up but fixes everything behind the scenes, or that family member who's always been quiet but appears when most needed. The dwarves remind us that true value doesn't shout, it acts. And when you're in the midst of your own personal battle, remember, sometimes the hero who's going to save you is already by your side, just waiting for the right moment. Meanwhile, Morgoth smiled, not out of gratuitous sadism, but strategy. He knew that his monster's charge was merely an opening. He was testing, wearing them down, dividing them. It was the old enemy trick, offering you a false victory to weaken you for the final blow. And Fingon, still holding on, could already taste the bitterness of reversal. The battlefield, once alive with hope, was now drenched in blood and silence. And silence, my friend, always signals the worst to come, because there was still one. Peace on the board, and it was about to betray everyone. The densest shadow hadn't yet descended upon Middle-earth. But it was coming, disguised as an alliance wrapped in promises with hungry eyes. Betrayal always arrives stealthily, cloaked in normalcy. Ulfang and the Easterlings, who until then marched as allies, revealed their true intentions when the damage was to be greater. It was a precise, cruel, calculated move. At the moment when Maedhros needed loyalty the most, the ground gave way beneath his feet. It's like when a friend, right when you're in a tight spot, simply vanishes, or, worse, turns against you. And there, in the east of Middle-earth, hope began to bleed. Even as he was enveloped in the fury of combat, Maedhros quickly realized that the battle was lost. His troops surrounded, his strategy in ruins, his trust shattered. But the cruelest blow came from the other side of the field. Fingon, the brave, the noble, faced Gothmog, the lord of the Balrogs. It was a duel of titans, yet only one of them carried dark fire in his veins. Fingon fell, and with him something greater collapsed. The morale of the free peoples. It wasn't just a commander dying, it was a symbol. It was the cry caught in the throat of those who still believed, and yet someone endured. Húrin, among men, turned his own flesh into a wall against the darkness. 70 enemies fell beneath his might. 70, can you imagine? It was as if a single warrior refused to accept the end, even when the world said, "It's over." He fought not only with muscles, but with his very soul. And that is the kind of strength you also carry when you decide not to give up, even when everything around you collapses. Believe me, it's in those moments that you discover who you really are. But Húrin's fate was not glory. Morgoth, like a maestro of despair, captured him. And winning wasn't enough. He wanted to humiliate. He wanted to turn a hero into a witness of the ruin of everything he loved. And that's exactly what he did. Bitterness, pain, and helplessness became Húrin's prison. And in Middle-earth, that was a fate worse than death, because witnessing a downfall is painful. But being forced to watch, unable to act, is pure torture. And what came next was even darker. Because when fear spreads and heroes fall, chaos finds fertile ground. And Morgoth still hadn't finished what he started. It was the beginning of the end. Morgoth finally achieved what he so longed for, spreading despair like a living plague. His victory wasn't merely military, it was symbolic. Maedhros's union disintegrated like dust in the wind, and the free peoples of Middle-earth were left without footing, without a leader, without hope. It was like waking from a victorious dream, only to realize it was all an illusion. And it is. In these moments that true darkness reveals itself, not the kind that blinds your eyes, but the one that suffocates the spirit. Húrin, now a prisoner, became the spectator of an endless tragedy. Morgoth cursed him with a cruel gift, the ability to see but not act, to witness the fall of his children, his wife, his home, as if he were the narrator of his own pain. This reminds us that there are silent defeats that don't appear on the battlefield but settle within the soul. And it's no use pretending to be strong when everything inside has already broken. Many live like that today, trapped in regrets, bound by traumas that never heal. From that point on, Middle-earth plunged into an age of shadows. Nirnaeth Arnoediad, or Battle of Unnumbered Tears, left not only fallen bodies, but an echo of suffering that would shape everything that followed. The tales told in taverns came to carry more silence than laughter, and the faces of those who survived, marked as if they bore an invisible tattoo of mourning. The war might end, but its scars walk with us, like shadows in broad daylight. Even so, and here lies the spark of hope, the tales did not end. Because where there is pain, there is also memory. And memory, as cruel as it may be, is the seed of resistance. Anyone who reads Tolkien knows a fall is never the definitive end, not even at Nirnaeth Arnoediad. Each tear shed there carved out a space in history, and even the darkest of scenarios sets the stage for new acts. It's like life. When everything seems to have collapsed, that's when you can rebuild from scratch with more truth, more strength, more purpose. And somewhere in Middle-earth, a thread of light still pulsed, quiet, almost forgotten, but alive, because even after the pain, the story goes on, and destiny still has much to say. So now tell me, after all this, What are you going to do with this knowledge? Because it's not enough to just listen to epic tales, feel the thrill of battles, and then go back to your routine as if nothing changed. What happened at Nirnaeth, Arnoediad, wasn't just a tragedy, it was a reminder that even the greatest can fall, that misplaced trust comes at a high cost, that the true enemy, more often than not, wears the mask of an ally, and that, even in the worst scenarios, there is always someone resisting. There's always a seed, stubbornly striving to grow. So what about you? Are you going to keep ignoring the signs around you? Are you going to keep trusting fragile alliances, letting pride speak louder than purpose? Or are you going to start acting with more awareness, strategy, and vision? The battlefield might be different. It could be your career, your relationships, your daily decisions. But the principles, no, they never change. If you've made it this far, you've already taken a step most wouldn't. You sought to understand pain in order to grow from it. But I ask you, what will you do now? Will you put this into practice, rethink your alliances? Will you rise again after falling? Let me know in the comments what impacted you the most in this story. Which character touched you the most? And most importantly, what part are you going to use in your life starting today? And of course, if this content resonated with you, if it touched you in any way, subscribe to the channel, hit the notifications, and join us on this journey through Middle-earth. Because this story is far from over.